Yeah, it's crazy, and it's so funny. There was a nursing student, and she had reached out to me, and she said, "I'm meeting with a senator, so can you give me some information?" I said, "Sure, of course. You can go to the website. There's information." And she met with them. So she had, I think she had either Facebook me or text me, and she said, "Oh, I met with him." Well, then I get a friend request from the senator. And I was like, well, this is exactly what we need, because her having that conversation with that senator, and this is a senator where in New Jersey, we had a staffing law to increase the number of nursing aides and nursing homes, long-term care facilities. It got voted through in 2015, went through Assembly, went through the Senate, went to the Chris Christie's desk, and it was vetoed. Unfortunately, every Republican Assembly person and Senate person voted against it. Well, this gentleman happens to be a Republican senator, but his niece is now a nursing student. He was paired up with this other nursing student. They were talking to them, explaining to them what's happening. And I said, if these young ladies and men could understand the power they have, just going in and taking that school assignment and speaking to a legislator, or taking that opportunity and voicing what they're seeing and telling, like literally sitting down and telling these people, these assembly people, these senators, these policymakers what's happening, it's in numbers that will change things. These men and women who sit in these elected seats, they know that we don't get breaks. They know that there's unsafe staffing because they've been hearing it for years. And their thing is, unless I get 100 phone calls about it,
not going to do anything about it.
Not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. And I think that that's something that, people say, well, it'll never change. Listen, the hospital associations in each state are really big, and yes, they're opposed to it. But you have some amazing nurse researchers. You have the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation that has a lot of nursing research that they've done a good amount of studies on staffing ratios. There's legitimate data. There has been worldwide research going on that I think there's a study that's been going on for almost 20 years at this point. I think that was out of the University of Pennsylvania. We have the data. We see what happens with California. California, the state did not fall off of the continent when they got safe staffing. Like, their hospitals didn't close. That's what they said was going to happen. But that rhetoric is still permeating the different states. And I was talking to a senator who's retiring, and he's like, I said to him, I said, listen, how do I get a bill? Like, because I'm tapping these people who now are not really in a situation that they're in a position to make a decision, but they have the inside information. He's like, the concern is if technology changes, then how is that gonna affect it? And I said, well, I think that the service we have is that these nurse executives from the organizations of nurse leaders for New Jersey or whatever state, insert state, they've gone and they've put all these scare tactics. One comment was even that if we had safe staffing bills, it would take away the power of the nurse to make decisions. I'm like, please, take my power away.
How would that do that?
Tell me I can only have 2 ICU patients or 4 ER patients.
Can we put pressure on the California Nurses Association, not the one associated with the ANA, but the one that broke away back in, it was 1996. When did they break away? 1996, I think.
I think it was I think it was after 96, because their bill got passed in 99. The California Nurses Association was one who was pushing for the bill. Then you had the National Nurses Union?
Oh, NNU. Oh, they're pretty new. They're pretty new. But the group, I think it was 1996, I want to say, when the California Nurses Association broke away from the ANA. They were the first group to do that. And now they have NNU, National Nurses United, and they unionize quite a large number of nurses. But I wonder if we can put pressure on them, or maybe meet with them and say, hey, how'd you do it? How'd you get that legislation passed?
I reached out to, I actually went through and I was looking at one of their videos that went over their history. So I reached out to the executive director.
Roseanne.
That was
Roseanne tomorrow.
Yeah. I sent her a message via Facebook. I didn't hear back, so I figured this week I'd be sending letters.
Okay.
Because it's hard to get in touch with them, but that's what I think all of us need to know. Like, tap these men and women who've already done it.
Right.
Let's not recreate the wheel. Let's work smarter, not harder.
Right.
What did you do, and how did you do it?
Right.
I mean, a lot of it is just like, you see what they did. A lot of it was getting the nurses out, like getting them out, getting them to picket, having them work together. They did not have a lot of small unions in California back then. I think they had central unions, and then they had a couple of smaller ones, but they worked together. That is the first thing that needs to happen in a lot of the states. The unions have got to work together. And Ann Toomey, and I wish I had actually read her quote.
I think I'm losing you a little bit.
I'm sorry. Ann Toomey had a quote that she actually had said at your rally about getting these unions to work together. And I would love to have her, as the president of her union, reach out to these other unions and not just work occasionally on, well, let's do a staffing rally once every 3 years, but really work together to get staffing done. If it needs to be state by state at first, or you get 20 states, but then really also support the legislation that's sitting in the Senate and then Congress. But we need them to look at this like, we need to do this as a whole. And, and I think that's been one of the hard things. And like I said, when I reached out to the members that I was able to find, I haven't heard back. I did hear back from a couple of people from the National Nurses United. And they're like, yeah, well, this is who you might want to talk to. Because we need like a tutorial, like explain to us, like, what's the next step? I'm getting a lot of information from nurses or questions about unionizing. For only about 30% of the hospitals in New Jersey are unionized at this time. It's not a lot.
Right.
Some of the unions are small. You have Barnabas Health. They are in contract negotiations, and their contract recently, it lapsed. We're not sure what's happening with them.
Right.
But, you lose one union in a small state like this state, that is one less person going down to your capital to lobby. And then when you start picking off union by union, and this happens because you have millennials that will be coming into the workforce, not understanding, because they didn't learn about legislation and they didn't learn about advocacy in school, like the importance of it. And they're saying, well, if they're going to have us go out on strike, I have bills to pay and I can't do this. Like, we need someone to help guide us.
Right. I agree. I think we should all make an appointment with Roseanne and take a plane out there and sit down and say, how'd you get legislation passed in California? We want to do the same. And we should, I would really even ask them if they could put forth some federal legislation. I mean, they're a union now. They're gung-ho NNU. And, they want members. They want to recruit. I would just say, you want to recruit? You want more members? You put forth federal legislation for nurse-patient ratio in every state, you'll have every nurse signing up for your union.
Yeah. I think, and that's one of the things that people ask too. They said, why don't we have a nurses union? Why do we have unions that are a Teamster union and this union and that union? But why don't we have a nurses union like California did? And I say that's really on the nurses, because to unionize, you need the nursing body of your facilities to say, you know what, we want to unionize.
Right.
And then finding a union who's going to represent your best interest as a nurse, making sure that things are going to be met. If you're with a union and maybe they're a different trade and they have a couple of facilities or a couple of hospitals, they may not be representing your best interests, because if their body is something else, like cars or something, how are they going to understand what the nurses need?
Right.
So I think if people are looking to unionize, then that's something where they really need to, you have to be picky. Choose somebody that's some sort of representation that's going to put your best interest first. But it's such
as long as it's not associated with the American Nurses Association.
Yeah, and I think that's
they have told us they're useless.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of even the same thing. The state charters that are there, it's the same thing. And when you ask them, like, why aren't you supporting this? Then you get this lengthy reason of why and then what they want. Well, we want to have acuity based. We want to have ratios aren't the answer.
Yes, they are.
It has to be decided on what the experience level of every nurse does. Every time a charge nurse, you make a decision who's going to get what assignment. You're looking.
Right.
What's the experience of the nurse? If you have somebody who's pretty sick and complicated, just like if you have a patient on ECMO, you're not going to give a new nurse who's never had ECMO training, or that's their first day.
Well, depends where you work. That would depend. As long as you're a warm body in a pen, I don't know if that they really take that into consideration. I like to think and hope they do, but I don't think so. But anyway, we really need to tap the brain of Roseanne tomorrow.
Now, she's still in California, or is she in DC? Because they're national chapter.
She's in California. She's in Sacramento. I know Jaleel. Johnson, yeah. He flew out there to speak with them, but and they said no, but then he wound up speaking to somebody in the office. And I'm not too sure why they had that resistance. Again, maybe Kathy or Stokes or Doris Carroll can let us know why they think there was some resistance with the California Nurses Association, joining the efforts of trying to get nurse-patient ratios. I don't know the dynamics there.
Anyone who's in a union at this point, any nurse, but, Nurses Take DC, this is probably the only event we have annually that is focusing specifically on staffing,
right,
and also on safety,
right?
Because
we
don't have a professional. You can go to all the critical care conferences you want, but this isn't brought up because most of our professional organizations they're not advocating for this.
Right, but why?
There's very few.
They have to. Nurses have to demand that they do that. If you belong to AACN or BCN or Sigma Theta Tau or whatever, you've got to demand. Yeah, when you go to the AACN chapter meeting, demand. Say, we need a bus to go to Washington. We need to do this. We need to orchestrate this. If you're in school, go to your teachers and say, let's get a bus with nursing students and with us who are going for a bachelor's and master's and get a bus and go down to Washington. Nurses have to demand that this happens.
Yeah.
And that's the only way it's going to get done. But I really hope they get 20, 40, 50,000 in April. I really hope it happens. It's sad if it doesn't, because with social media, you really have like 1 million people,
You would think, right?
You would think. If not, we're just going to have to make it the same day.
I think people are amazed, like, how did she get so many people there? There was no Twitter. I'm like, no, there was no Facebook. There was not Facebook.
No internet.
I think we had AOL, because I think 95 I was stationed in San Antonio. But, I had nurses who were military nurses who went up. But I'm like, 95, that was like, you had dial-up, and these young people are like, what's dial-up?
Yeah.
You have no idea.
Yeah, no, I made sure I went and I lectured in every single state, because every state was represented, even Alaska.
Wow.
And I just said, you got to be there. You have to be there. And I gave them a copy of the bill. That was a big event. The bill was like 40-something pages, and I had that Xeroxed. I probably sent out 300,000 pieces of mail.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I went for my lungs. I could have bought like 15 houses, but I decided to try to put a dent into this profession. It didn't go as planned, but at least I gave it a try. I gave it a try.
But you know what, though? It didn't go as planned, but you set the groundwork. You set the foundation.
A little bit of a foundation. But now, why are we going downhill? Why do we got 160 people showing up as opposed to 35,000? What the heck's going on?
That is a good question.
Because if anything, I think the work environment is worse now than it was, 20-something years ago.
That's what I'm hearing. And I said, when I was in San Antonio, and I worked, I was predominantly ICU step down then most of my military career was spent in ERs, and in our ERs, we didn't even have nurses, you were medics, but you intubated, sutured, chest tubed. That's what we did. So when my one unit I worked on had 50 beds. There were 4 registered nurses. All of them were officers in the military. They had a bachelor's. But then you had 4 medics who were like LPN, higher level if something happens. And, you never really felt terribly unsafe because you had 8 people for 50. And, I mean, it was very different. Yeah. Your medic started IVs, put Foley's in, did your eyes and nose, gave your meds. It was different. And I said, I never really felt like it was an unsafe situation. Coming into the civilian world, I'm just like, this is awful. This is really,
it's awful.
It's really bad.
Yes.
And I thought it was maybe, I've worked in 2 of the most crime-ridden areas in New Jersey, and actually they're in the top 25 for the country. And I was like, is it because of the demographic that it's like this? But I've also worked in community hospitals in nice areas. It's not. It's that the way things are now, it's so business oriented. It's like, bottom line, it's the mighty dollar. Right. And nurses are the ones who are getting really, I would say, abused as far as like even labor laws. And the patients are the ones who are suffering it. And God forbid something happen, you're licensed. You work so hard for it, protect it. The only way to do it is with staffing ratios.
Right.
So
great. I agree. But hopefully we'll have thousands and thousands show up on April 26th.
Yeah. So are you going to be down there for the legislative day as well?
I can. I'm lecturing on the 25th, and where am I? I'm somewhere lecturing, so I'll be flying in that night. And then I'll do a little speech at the rally. But I hope there's thousands and thousands of nurses there for their sake and for patients' sake.
Absolutely. Well, Laura, you are an inspiration. You really are.
Thank you. And Kate, this is wonderful that what you're doing. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And I think, do you have like a list of people that follow you? Like, how do you know how many people have heard you?
So as far as I can, I just have the people. I've kept everything on Facebook where you have to friend. It has to be a friend request because I'm really trying to keep the administration from hospitals from trolling as much as possible. So I'll send someone a friend request. Yeah, I try to have a little bit of control over that because I know, like, Show Me Your Stethoscope has theirs open, so anyone can go in and read the boards. I really felt like because of the nature of this, I really felt like I'm going to keep it closed so that only, like, nurses would be tagging their friends and saying, hey, you know what? Get on this page. This is where the information is. And I'd spend, like, basically word of mouth since, I think, February. I think February is when I put the page up. Okay. And then that's pretty much what I've been doing. I have a website that I put information on. I'm just building the calendar for starting the legislative session in January, the phone calls that need to be made, like all that stuff. I'm also getting, at least just in New Jersey, where I'm asking folks to be district liaisons because I need 1 to 3 nurses or anyone who's an advocate to be on the senators like white on rice, like once a month phone calls, follow up. This is what's happening with legislation, and they'll be the contact person. Right. I had also partnered with New York Post, which is an advocacy group, and came up with a teaching called How to Stay Safe in the Hospital. So the plan is to roll out an education series that's going to be going into 55 and overs and talking to them how to stay safe in the hospital, introducing them to the legislation, telling them how to advocate for themselves and their families. Because oftentimes they have no idea what's going on. They don't know they can ask for a family meeting. They don't know what medications they're on. And it's confusing. It's hard to navigate. Who better to introduce them to that than the nurses who are working in the facilities? Right. So, as far as getting a formal list, I don't have a formal list together yet. My hope is to put together where I can get people to kind of do like a fill out either on the website or Facebook, which would then give me their contact information so I can keep a better list of it.
Right. Well, closer to the march, if you want, I'll provide the bus to go to Washington. I don't have a problem with that. Or 2 buses, whatever you need. So maybe it's something to think about. Maybe you want to start putting the feelers out so that in March, people do want to go. I'll have a bus there for
That would be great.
Jersey
Yeah.
people. And,
Jersey people. Well, you're in New York, right?
I'm New York. It's 55 people on a bus. So
right.
Hey, you need 2 buses, 3 buses, 10 buses. I'll have it there.
Yeah, and I know that I spoke with one of the executive leadership from the New Jersey Nurses Union, which is up in Barnabas Medical Center, and they're planning on doing a bus. They said they have nurses coming down, and I thought that was great to hear a union that's going to support it. I'm hoping that HPAE comes out. That's the majority of unionized nurses belong to that union.
And they haven't said yes? They haven't said yes for a bus yet?
I don't know. I haven't. I sent a message to Ann Toomey. I haven't heard back from her, and I spoke to their vice president at the Candlelight Vigil. But I'll reach back out to them.
Yeah, they need to have a lot of buses setting up.
Yeah.
I mean,
get the nurses out.
And I'm offering buses. They're unions, and they don't have buses there. The people
we need to get them to commit to it.
The people that are paying dues need to get mad about that. Oh.
I 100% agree. And I'll tell you this, because even when there's been lobby days, what I've heard from the union presidents is they've had low turnout, and they're saying, well, the nurses they don't want to get involved. And I said, well, that's one part of it, but if you're not updating them on legislation actively,
right,
and why it's so important, they're not going to come out.
Right.
You have to engage them on a more than once a year basis of let's go down to our capital and let's advocate. This needs to be, this is what's happening. This is what we're doing. We need you to do this.
Right.
You can't, the unions are not there just to get contracts for you so that they're getting their dues. The unions are responsible to make sure that our work environments are safe.
Right.
That our profession is protected. That is the responsibility. So
Exactly. But what's that, a little dog?
He's a big dog. He is a 95-pound lab and a Bernese Mountain Dog mix. He's a year and a half old, and he's nuts.
Oh, they're big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's running around with a ball in his mouth, and he's self-tossing it. So
oh, goodness. Well, this is a wonderful thing you're doing, all right? And if I can help you in any way, just reach out. If you want me to get you buses, I'll get buses, whatever you need. But
I will definitely be in touch with you. So thank you again so much. Have a great week, and we'll talk soon. All right, Laura. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.